Hello, everyone. Another episode of On Average MD. And today I'm so excited to bring you an incredibly powerful, exciting, and very active on social media. I mean, I'm learning from you, Dr. Toya Luces. And Dr. Toya told me that I'm okay to talk to her, say Dr. Toya. So that is how we're going to call you, Dr. Toya. And we have been, colleagues for a while now. So you're OBGYN, and we were discussing, since I love bringing powerful, incredibly a powerful woman on the podcast, although I have no problem with men and I can absolutely bring them too. But, looking at my podcast, I was like, wow, there's a lot of women, mostly women, really. You know what? If you're a man and you want to come on the podcast, this is your time. Come. I'm looking for men.
Challenge.
Come. There's so many things we can talk about, and I would love to have the perspective of a man. Not just one. I want many. Girl, come. So that's like the number one. Number two is that we were talking about how there's so many changes that are happening around the postpartum. So, right, so people have a baby and then, you have hormonal changes with that, and then they have postpartum, and you specialize in this as an OBGYN specialized in this, and you're passionate about this, not only for people who are going for this, but also the support system. So without further ado, Dr. Toya, talk to us about the postpartum. Like, what should we all know, either because we are experiencing it or because we are taking care or seeing someone that's just had a baby?
Yes, so I would love to talk about that. And like Dr. Amigues said, I am Dr. Toya. I am an OBGYN by training, but I'm also a wife and a mom. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago. I trained on the East Coast, and now I live and practice in California. And I'm also a coach for physician moms who are in these early stages of motherhood and really just want help navigating this sometimes stressful but beautiful time in their lives. So, I'm all about postpartum and the different changes, not just because I'm an OBGYN, but because of my work as a physician coach as well. And it's such a unique time because it's a time where there's so much focus on the baby, but this person who has had the baby just went through a major medical event, really. And there's almost this expectation that, oh, she'll be okay, right? But there needs to be the expectation that we take care of her just as much as we take care of the baby because of all of those big changes. Like you mentioned, the hormonal changes alone can cause so much upheaval. They drop in the progesterone, they drop in your estrogen. When you have the baby, when the placenta comes out, those can cause, the baby blues. That's why you have that happening, is because of the crash of those hormones. And there are just so many changes that physical recovery is really needed and important, but also mental, emotional recovery as well, which is something I think that we forget about. And I think it is an important conversation to have, not just for pregnant people to know that they need to take care of themselves, but for the people surrounding them. Because yes, y'all are there to see the baby and take care of the baby, but just remember that mom needs to be taken care of as well.
Wow. So there's so many things that came into my mind as you were talking. I want to share the first one, which was, I was thinking, we have to take care of the mom. I think we have to take care of the dad as well. And I was thinking of my own journey as a mom of young twins that were extremely premature. And, the full 100 days were in the NICU. But then when we came home, I felt completely challenged and alone. And I don't think I had the postpartum depression, but I decided that I was not good enough with my kids. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to go away. And I had this disconnect between me and my kids. I did not feel like a good mom. Is that, I felt like an awful mom for many, many years. The mom guilt also. Can you tell us about this? Like, is this something that you deal with? That you work with?
And I want to say, first of all, I'm so sorry that you went through that, and not even, your experience was your experience, but that you felt alone. That's the biggest thing that is heartbreaking, is that so many people go through this, and so many people think it's just me.
I don't. Okay, so that is actually really interesting. I don't think I was alone. I
Mm,
didn't have my parents. I didn't have my. So I come from France. I was in New York
yeah.
City. It's not so much that I was feeling alone, but rather than that, it's not necessarily easy to put words on what's going on you.
Hmm.
And so I just felt that I wasn't good, right? Like I
Yeah.
didn't want to be next to a crying baby, and I had two
Right.
crying babies. And so then the only way I wanted to get out, I
Yeah.
wanted to get out. And so then I was like, wow, I'm abandoning my kids. I remember thinking
Yeah.
super clearly there that I understand women who abandon their kids. This is awful.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Please don't judge me. I
It's
was
not awful. No, and I think when I say, you were alone in that thinking, it's the fact that you think that you're a bad mom. Because
yes.
if you knew how many people think that way, you wouldn't think that you're a bad mom. You would think I'm having a very normal experience in this time, and there's nothing wrong with me, and I am not a bad mom. So, I don't know if you know my story. I had the same thing happen. So I actually went
Sorry for
away.
tell the story.
Yeah, so for actually this baby, my last baby, so I have two, my 1-year-old, at around 3 months, when I was pretending that everything was fine, I was back to doing my social media, doing my speaking, and everything was great. Yes, Dr. Toya is out and about. But on the inside, I was very angry. I was in a lot of physical pain from my postpartum and my pregnancy. And I was resentful that I didn't feel like the people around me were taking care of me in the right way. So I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. I need a break from all of y'all. So I'm just gonna go. And luckily my husband just took charge and was like, no, this is not happening. We're going to go together, and we are going to figure this out together. And I had the help come, and I was able to reprioritize my entire life, make sure I was taking care of myself and all of that. And that's actually how I came into the coaching side of it, because of my own experience. But when I hear you speak about that in particular, it makes me think to my first postpartum, where it wasn't necessarily bad. I was in survival mode, which I feel like is very common for a lot of moms. It was in the middle of the pandemic. I was actually alone. It was just me and my husband, because my mother could not come. And I remember having this crying baby and being like, I don't want this. Like, I don't want to be here. But there was nowhere to go because it was COVID, right? So, and that feeling made me feel terrible. And the bad thing about it, I never told my husband. He found out actually after this child was born. But I just remember being like, you won't stop crying. Like, I don't want you here anymore. And it is a terrifying feeling to even think
Yeah.
that way, to know that this is how you really feel. Like, is somebody going to judge me? Are they going to take the baby away? But these are very normal thoughts. And it is the feeling of guilt that actually makes it fine. Like, if it is incongruent with your personality, you know that this is a bad thought. Not that
Mhm.
you should feel bad about it, but you should know it is normal. It is normal to have these intrusive thoughts. You are tired, you are stressed, you may be resentful, because during those moments when the baby is crying, most of the times everybody else is asleep. And it's just like, come on, like, I cannot catch a break, right? So it is such a common experience, and I feel like we need to talk more about it, to normalize it, and to let the family again know that if somebody is brave enough to express this to you, it is not, well, let me call CPS because you're a bad mom. Just know that you need to love them even more. You need to give them even more support. You need to give them a break so that they can actually having taken time away is fine, and it's normal and healthy for them, but you need to be there to support them so that they can do that.
Yeah. Yes, it's really interesting because it means that the mom, because like that voice is loud, but that voice is like being repressed, right? So you're like, no, 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 shut up, like don't say this about your baby. Like, especially me, like I wanted to have babies so much. It
Oh my
was
gosh.
get them, and once they were there like 4 months early. So then
Yeah.
be home, healthy, and I'm freaking out. And I'm like,
Yeah.
wait, on, like, this is actually hard. And I knew it. The thing that's really annoying is that I knew this.
Yeah.
You know it. You know about
Yeah.
all the physiological changes and all this. And
Yeah.
as a physician, you're like, I know this. But yet,
Yeah.
I did not want to recognize because I was like, well, no, it's fine. Like, this
Yeah.
is good. I remember just being like, you know what? I need to work on my papers. Like, there's some research that I need to do right now.
Yeah.
So we're going to get a babysitter and a nanny, and I'm going to go and work. I need to work.
Yeah. I think there are so many things that you said there that I just want to touch on, right? Especially if somebody who's gone through infertility or had a struggle before they got pregnant or anything, there is this added guilt if you feel this way, that I wanted this so bad and now I don't want this, right? And now I'm feeling ungrateful. Like I can't express how I'm feeling because I was so, desperate or whatever to have this happen. I shouldn't be feeling this way. So it's like the guilt is the fear of judgment. Because if you tell somebody, they'll be like, well, you asked for this. This is what you wanted, right? So there's so many more levels when you feel like you should be grateful and you're not. So, that is a very real thing. And I just want to acknowledge that and validate that for your experience. And then there's the other part with the physician, right? So it is a very unique thing for people who are so highly educated, who are so accomplished and can, do research and can save lives, to then be so vulnerable, so lost, so confused in this time. And it's not a good feeling. It's like, I know how to, I save lives and I can't manage this. So it's just like, I don't like this feeling. I'm guilty that I want to go back and do my research and all these things, because at least there I know that I'm competent. This is something that I can do. And it's a distraction from the situation that I don't want to be in. So, there's so many different layers. And when you add physician on top of it, it just adds more complication. And that is particularly why I serve physician moms. And, it's a fine line between, do I have like a mental issue going on that needs to be addressed, and is this a normal part of postpartum? And I think that's where the communication with your support team and your doctor is really important, because you may not know, even if you're a doctor, you may not know when you have crossed that line into I need help.
Mm-hmm. Well, so I could literally talk to you for hours because it was traumatic. Like this having babies was probably one of the most traumatic experience of my life. All of it, like having the fear I would never be a mom, having the fear of losing the kids, having the fear of just never have a connection with them. I think that was probably one of the hardest part. The good news, fast forward 8 years later, I have a good connection. So don't give up. I'd be very, very interested, and probably this is my scientific mind, to hear you talk about what is normal postpartum and what is not normal. Like when you say, oh, maybe there was help needed then. Like, can you tell us?
Yeah. So in the beginning, and I thank you for bringing this up because this is really, really important. In the beginning, immediate postpartum with those hormone changes, that is responsible for the quote unquote baby blues, right? And everybody has heard of the baby blues, but I think there's a lot of misconception about what it actually means. So it is actually not a disorder. It's not anything that's wrong. It's a normal physiological response to those changes in hormones. Also, this big event that just happened, the sleep deprivation, the overwhelm. So you have these outbursts of crying, you just, feel overwhelmed. That is normal. And what makes it specifically baby blues is the time. So that really should not last longer than 2 weeks. If it is longer than 2 weeks, then more evaluation is needed. I'm not going to say, yes, this is definitely depression or something like that, but we need to just pay closer attention and be very vigilant about if we need help. And again, for the family, if the birthing person needs help, because what ends up happening is that you continue to feel bad. You continue to feel disconnected and all of these things. And you're like, oh, well, it's just the baby blues. It's going to get better. And then weeks go by and months go by and you still don't feel okay. And that's why, and I'm glad this was not your reality, but actually the rate of maternal suicide, it peaks at like 6 to 9 months because there's so many things where people are just waiting to feel better, and they really have untreated depression, they have untreated anxiety, like all of those things. Just because you have it in your head, well, I'm going to get better, and then it hits you, well, actually I'm not. So what now, right? So that timing is really important if you are continuing to have symptoms, and it may not necessarily look like it does in another period of your life. In postpartum, you may just not feel right. You may feel like disconnected, like you just don't want to be a mom again. You may have intrusive thoughts, and there's a difference between intrusive thoughts that are concerning, like when you talk about postpartum psychosis, where you hear voices and those things, which is actually an emergency, or you have a thought of, I want to put the baby in the bathtub and just leave it, but then you feel horrible about it, you get scared, that is different than thinking about it, having a plan and being like, I think that's a good idea. So knowing the difference is not anybody's responsibility, right? We don't expect people to know how to diagnose themselves, but what we want you to do is feel empowered and safe enough to speak up to somebody about it so that you can get evaluated and see, is this actually normal or do I need help? So I think that's the most important thing, because I think telling women, even physician moms, these are the symptoms to look out for is really difficult and kind of unfair to expect anybody to be able to really evaluate themselves in this time. But just, having the knowledge that I may need help if these symptoms are ongoing, and help doesn't necessarily mean medication, but if it does, that's okay, because it doesn't mean that you have to be on it forever, right? There are lots of women who just take it during postpartum and then they can stop afterwards, because this is a contained time that can just trigger these symptoms with depression, anxiety, and different things. Some people have undiagnosed and it comes up in the postpartum period, so they may have to continue. But even then, like, it is not their options. So that's another fear that people have, is that if I speak up, oh, well, I'll have to be on medications, and I don't want to be on these medications forever or anything like that. And then there's the other piece of breastfeeding, and there are lots of safe options as well if that's how you choose to nourish your baby. So there are lots of different things to consider, but you don't have to consider them alone. My main message is reach out and get help so that somebody else can support you in this time and get you the help that you need.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much. This really is touching to my core. I will tell you, like, this really, I'm like just thinking, I wish I knew you then, or at least that I could follow you on the social media. I don't even know that you were doing it at the time.
Right.
Yeah. But so before you tell us where to find you, I'm sure a ton of people will want you, but to work with you. But can you tell us what are they looking like, those mom, or actually the husbands, or maybe the mother of the mom, or or friends? Like, that's actually a really, really good gift to give to a mom that just had a baby. What are they looking at? Like, what type of program are they looking at? Just like because I tell you, like, my OBGYN, like, that's not what we were looking at.
Yeah. So it depends. So if you notice that there's something going on that may need evaluation, you really do need to see your OB. We are, as obstetricians, we are supposed to be capable and confident in evaluating and treating all of these things, right? But there's some people that are just not comfortable. Your primary care and reproductive psychiatrists focus on this time. There's a special certification that people can get called the perinatal mental health certification that specializes in that. I am working my way through it. I'm going to do my exam next month. So there are different things that you can look for in a person that if you need medical help. I focus on the coaching aspect, so the psychosocial, everything else that's not medicine, because all of those things are actually important to work together, and focusing on that transition time when people go back to work. Because just like with the rates of maternal suicide, when you transition back into normal life, that's when all of those things come crashing down, right? So I do one-on-one coaching for women in this phase, and it usually lasts for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, depending on what your need is. And it looks like weekly support, just a safe space to talk about things like this, to have a non-judgmental, space where you have another mom who's a physician, who's an OBGYN that really just gets it. And you don't have to be afraid of being judged, of, thinking that you're a bad mom. So that's how I work. And I also I'm a big advocate of spreading this message to everyone. So that's why I do so much on social media. And that's why I encourage people who have no chance of ever having a child to follow me and engage with me, because I guarantee somebody who has the ability to get pregnant and you can help take care of them. And I actually have a resource for postpartum mental health on my website. It's on the banner. So I list, the suicide prevention hotline, some other numbers that's for support, and it's support for the birthing person and the family, and some of my favorite books in this time, my TikTok playlist. So I have resources because I just want everyone to benefit from this information and to just be better and be better taken care of in this time.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I think this was a very powerful episode for any mom, any mom to be, any former, well, not mom, but like grandmom.
Yeah.
grandmom. And in general, I think husband and so on. And I think this is really a vulnerable discussion. So thank you so much for having, for coming to the show, and definitely to be continued. So thank you again, Dr. Toya.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. This was great.
Yeah. And everyone, see you next week. Again, if you enjoyed this episode, please share it. Don't hesitate. Please actually write reviews, because that's how we get our shows to be shown to the world. And then if you are a man and you want to come on the show, because every single one has a very interesting thing to share, I think it's time. I think it's time that we have more men on the show, even though, as we just saw with this conversation, there's so much that we can learn from everyone. So see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.